It is Sunday nights across the West Midlands. It's time to look back on a very busy weekend of football, as we always do at this time. It's the West Midlands Football Podcast from Birmingham TV. I'm Ben Ellis, joined this week by Gav Longthorne and Dom Phillips. Evening, gentlemen.
Evening.
Evening.
Okay, so let's just look at sort of where we stand here. We are streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter as always. You are welcome to leave your views in the comments. We started. I like to rotate, particularly with the Premier League. 1 week we'll start with Villa, another week we'll start with Wolves, and we started with Wolves last week. But I'm going to stick with it this week, Gav, because what's gone wrong? What's happened? Because they can't seem to put one foot in front of the other at the moment. They were lucky to get nil against Brighton yesterday.
I was going to say, do we have to talk about it?
Yes, we do.
Obviously, we do because we're a Midlands podcast. But Chronic couldn't even describe it because I think that would be generous saying that about the performance. I think it was just awful. It was absolutely awful. I mean, for the last 3 or 4 games, they seem to be trying to one-up themselves on the worst performance of the season. They've done it again yesterday, with that performance. It was just terrible. I think that when I was walking out there, I overheard a Wolves fan when I was walking out there, and I think he made a good point that I think after the Leeds game, when we lost 3-2, I think we've hit a brick wall that we can't go past for some reason. But the thing is as well, the players just didn't look bothered to me. They just didn't. He's got some players there, and even after the game, the manager was saying that he's going to use that as a measuring stick for next season, or whether he's going to keep some of the players that played that game today. And I'll just, he got players up then. I don't like slagging my own players off, but I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to keep the trend running every week. Den Donker is not good enough to play in the midfield in the Premier League. He's just not good enough. Martino has had his best years. That showed it up yesterday. I can't blame the wing backs so much because I think if you play that system, they need overlap help, and they didn't get it again yesterday. And Brighton just come there with a plan, and they just looked like the better team on the day. Or they looked like the better team, but not if you take those 2 teams and you asked which one looks like the established Premier League team, Brighton were the one yesterday. Like they just schooled us. I think they did anyway, and I don't think you could have bought, borrowed, or stealed a win yesterday, or stealed anything out of the game, because I think they just absolutely schooled us.
I'm looking at this subjectively. I think if you're coming towards the end of the season and you're up against a team with absolutely nothing to play for, but who under no pressure whatsoever can express themselves and play really good football. I mean, you really are talking about Brighton and Hove Albion, aren't you? That is the team that is just going to sort of in the style that has become theirs under Graham Potter, just go out and sort of express themselves. When it came to the nitty gritty, they went for a long period without being able to score a goal, let alone get a result. Found themselves safe, and now the final couple of months of the season, they've just been able to play them out. So, there's 2 sides to that, aren't there? You can come up against a side that has nothing to play for, so are not interested, or that just relax. And that's what we saw with Brighton yesterday. They were completely relaxed, took the game by the scruff of the neck from start to finish, and in the end, ran out comfortable winners.
Exactly. As you say, there's 2 sides to that whole stereotype of, if a team's got nothing to play for, they're not going to bother. But also, as you said, when there's no pressure, that's going to be to massive their advantage, especially against Wolves, who have been a good side this season. But I agree with Gav that ever since the Leeds game, it's just like there's been a massive mental block for the players and the coaching staff, and whatever they try and do, it just seems like nothing's working, nothing's coming together. I was even seeing rumours on social media today, and I wanted just to see if Gav's perspectives on this. That there's a bit of an internal bust up. That's probably just like social media sensationalist stuff, but it wouldn't surprise me that there's probably a bit of tension around the club at the moment, because Europe is something that they clearly are looking for this year. They clearly have the ability to go and get it, but every week it just seems to be slipping further and further away from them. And I don't really know what the answer is, and I think the worst part is that I'm not sure whether Bruno Lage looks like he knows what the answer is. I think the answer probably involves new players in the summer, but then that comes down to, what the investment is like in the summer.
I agree with you, Dom. To be honest, I think with the manager, like, to be fair to the manager, he come out today and he took the blame. Like, Silva didn't look he was going to score yesterday, but at least he cared. Like, and I think taking him off was, rather than Hwang, was the wrong sub. Which cut a lot of conflict when I spoke to Wolves fans about it. And taking Neves, for me, if a player's not fit enough to play more than a half a game of football, I don't get why he's even in the squad. Or I just don't get that. So I'd rather him not been in the squad full stop from the start. But to be fair to the manager, going back to the point, look, he came out and he took blame for that yesterday, and he said, look, all of that yesterday, the performance, the selections, blah 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 blah, that was down to me, so I'll take blame for that. But it's the first time I've walked out of there yesterday, and I've heard people saying that they're a bit disillusioned by the manager, and that speaks volumes on the performance that we watched, because it just wasn't good enough. And I think he's got another year there, definitely, because I think that I would get disagreements from people when I speak to Wolves about the way that we're playing, because we've had games like Liverpool, the Man City game, where it looks very Nuno-ish from like how we played last season. But you do see little glimmers of what he wants to do there. I think his little artistic license at the moment is that he hasn't got the players he wants there fully. So I think you've got to give him at least another season to see if he can do something there. But it's interesting, the fans aren't daft, especially Midlands fans aren't daft. When they watch a team play like we played yesterday, it's just not good enough. And it's the first rumblings I've heard coming out of there from the fans that they weren't happy with the manager. And
well, he made no secret, Bruno Lage, at the end of the summer transfer window that he didn't get anywhere near what he wanted, and they had that difficult start where they lost the first three games of the season. But what we've mostly seen throughout the season is that they're playing enough games now where it's Bruno Lage's team, but it's Nuno's squad. And I think and he's tried to kind of get with what he's got, mold it to what he wants to get out there on the field. On the Box to Box podcast on Tuesday night, the national show, we had a segment at the end where we had to name our biggest flop signing or player of the season. Unfortunately, I went for Danny Ings, but that was Tuesday night. That's a lot rosier today. But I'll throw a name at you, Gav. Hwang.
yeah, I can't disagree with you. I cannot disagree with you, Ben. I think those 4 or 5 goals he scored when he had that first run in the team, when we signed him on loan, I think it's masked his whole career so far for Wolves. I really do. I think it's just not good enough. I think some of it's got a bit to blame with the coaches and the manager, though, because for the life of me, I don't get why they keep trying to play him out wide, because he's not a winger. I think if you're going to get the best out of him, it's got to be down the middle. I genuinely think it has, but at the same time, you need to see that desire and effort out of the player as well, and it wasn't there again yesterday. It's the old typical throw your hands up, look like you're annoyed with other players, but at the end of the day, if you're playing in that league, you've got to go into games thinking that you've got to get your hands dirty, because that's how English football works. Like, that's how it works. I'll throw another thing at you as well. I think yesterday showed why Connor Cody can't play in the back four for England, especially with the second goal. It got completely showed up again.
Did I not say that last week? Did I not talk about his not for England, but I said that to play Connor Cody, you have to play a back three, which just to get Connor Cody into the team, that's fine, but it could be to the ultimate detriment of the rest of the team. It's a decision that's going to have to be made.
Yeah. I think the manager, it's not a secret that the manager wants to play a back four, and I don't think he's going to be in those plans. Especially when you watch it again yesterday. Pardon. And you see how Bolly played as well. Out of the ones that have played in that back five, Max Kilman's clearly the best centre half, so I think it's going to be him and someone else next season. But it's a shame, because I think especially with England as well, look, he does offer you something, Cody, but he's just not good enough, Ben. He's not good enough. Look, he's not quick enough. He's not a bad footballer, but he's too slow reading the game. Look, he can't do it. And that second goal yesterday was absolutely criminal. I mean, I'll go to every home game as the season ticket holder, and even before that second goal went in, if the ball was still open in the stand, I wouldn't have gone back up. But that just put the cherry on the cake, because I think that summed up how we are this season now. It's a shame, because I think we've been pulled back into this top 6 race 4 or 5 times when we had no right to, and we've just wasted it again yesterday against a team that are 3 places below you, who the manager isn't daft, but I think he won't let them sit on the beach. But you shouldn't be getting outplayed by teams like Brighton at home. It's just not good enough. It's just not good enough, Ben.
I'll come to Dom in just a minute, but I suspect, Gav, you'll know the answer to this more than either of us will. How long has Pedence been out for?
For what time? Because I think his whole Wolves career, he's played about 24% of his tenure. So if I'm going to be completely honest, this is it, isn't it? I think Daniel Pedence is one of our better footballers, but you can't. He's fit for a third of the time, which isn't good enough again. Like
He last played against Villa.
Yeah.
Right. I'll just check that out. So what was that? A good 4 or 5 weeks ago? Which is obviously sort of Wolves' last win. And you talk about the quality. Is he injured at the moment? Presumably, he went off injured in the Villa game, didn't he? Yeah, I remember it now. So he's been missing ever since. Semedo picked up the injury in the early stages of the second half, sort of yesterday. They showed with the squad, even in Nuno's time when it was stretched to its absolute limits with the Europa League run, that there isn't the depth. Now, if the financial fair play restrictions that they've been under are going to be lifted this summer, they've got the money. Have Fosun, they're up there amongst the very richest. It's a question of being able to attract players to come to Wolverhampton Wanderers. Now, it's easy if you've got a whole setup which is based upon sort of Portuguese football and Portuguese recruitment, and that's kind of the but you can't keep going to that well, can you, and drawing up the water? So do you think that Wolves could find top quality players from elsewhere? They seem to have tried it with Hwang and it's failed miserably. So do you think they could go look elsewhere than Portugal to bring in the players that they need to keep improving?
I think you bring them in from anywhere. Bring them in from anywhere. If they work for you, then they work for you at the end of the day. Like I say with Hwang, I think that's still a coin toss whether that's going to come off or not. I think there's a good footballer in there, but it's just a case of I think you've got to play him the right way. Watching that game yesterday, watching the last 3 games before it, Ben, I think it's the first time that you've got to really look at revamping the spine of the team. I really do. Look, I think the Neves thing seems to be up in the air, whether he's going to stay or leave, or if he's going to leave, I think they have to sign him the first few weeks of the window so they can start doing it. I think we need a strong centre-half to play with someone in the back 4, i.e. Kilman. I think we need 2 midfielders, and I think you need an established number 9. Like I say, whether it's from Portugal or whether it's from a foreign league, I think you need a strong number 9 target man up there to hold the ball up for because we've got players there that can win you games. But I think it's the first time yesterday where I really looked at that team as well, especially in midfield, and I thought, God, this team is starting to look very stale. Now, it's the 4th season that we've been in the Premier League now, and not a lot's changed. We've had a managerial change. We've had players changing up the top of the pitch, but you play out from the back. I think when you have players that are in the spawn of the team, they dictate the play. Like I said earlier, I think the Neves thing was just ridiculous. Like, if he was only ever going to play half a game of football yesterday, I'd rather him have not played, and I'd rather have played somebody like Luke Cundle, who could have at least put himself a bit for the whole 90 minutes. But it's going to be a very interesting summer. I think this is going to be a summer where you're going to see a lot of what the ambitions are of the owners as well, especially. I think when we've come out of this financial fair play window now with those 3 years that have gone past, and we've got that bit more freedom now to sign players, I think you're going to see what the ambitions of the manager, the owners are. I don't think we're too far off, but it'd be a shame if we let it slip. But yeah, it's just disappointing. It's just so disappointing. Even now, I just feel so disappointed after that performance yesterday. I just think, where's the where's the animation, the passion, especially from the manager as well. I'm sorry that I'm going on off on a bit of a rant now, but I'd like to see the manager get annoyed on the touchline sometimes as well, because I think he's trying to act too cool for school. But it's nice to see the manager actually project it on the touchline sometimes as well. And he says that he does it in the dressing room at half time and full time, but I'd like to see it more in games as well. I really would. But onwards and upwards, I suppose, as a fan.
We just mentioned, Dom, that they've got the money to compete in the lower top half of the Premier League, shall we say, which is roughly where they sort of are now. But there's a question of being able to attract players to Wolverhampton Wanderers over the summer. You've got Newcastle now, who are going to be coming up and strong next season. You'd maybe think West Ham wouldn't just sit still with the kind of season that they've had. We're obviously hoping that Villa will rebuild as well under Steven Gerrard. The squad, as Gav said, needs refreshing. How easy is it going to be for them to do that?
Not easy at all, because there's so many factors to take into consideration. And the best example is one that Gav's mentioned, is Connor Cody. I completely agree with everything he said about him. I don't think he can play in a back four. I think if you're a defender who's reliant on playing in a back three, that means there's something a little bit deficient, in that you can't be a top level centre back if you can't play in a 2 or a 4 or whatever you want to call it. And keeping on hold of him because of his passion, his leadership and sentimentality is like if Villa would have kept on to players like Alan Hutton in the Championship. You know, they're players who can do a job for you at a certain level, but when you're trying to not only change the quality of the team, but change the style of the team as well, change the formation, change the tactics, everything, there are some players that just aren't going to be there. And then I think Wolves need to make sure there's the right people making the right football decisions. We've seen people like Thelwell leave the club in recent years, Nuno, people who have had a big impact on how the club's run. And I think it's important that the directive for who goes, who stays, and what happens next season has to come from Bruno Lage, because then if it fails, that's where you know what the problem is. But if it fails and Bruno Lage doesn't get his chance, then you're not backing him, and there's no point not backing a manager. So I think Wolves, as you say, need a massive rebuild. The squad is looking a bit stale. As you said, they haven't changed much for 4 years. I just worry about who's going to make those decisions. And with Wolves' let's say mixed record of transfer success, yes, they've signed Joe Moutinho for pennies, but then they've also signed players like Dendoncker and other players we've been talking about. I think Trincao's got potential, but was he ever going to be a player who's going to play 30 Premier League games this season and get 10 goals? No. So I don't really know. There's a lot of stuff to do, and I'm interested to see who's going to make the decisions.
I don't think Trincao's going to kick a football for us again, if I'm going to be honest. I think a lot of that I think they brought him in because he looked exciting with the little flashes you saw him when he come on for Barcelona as a sub. But I think they were hinging a lot on the Traore deal being a factor in it as well. And I think now Xavi's had a look at him and he doesn't fancy him, so I think you're probably going to have to offload him somewhere else other than Barcelona now, if I'm going to be honest. But at the same time, I don't think Trincao's got it in him. I think he's very... we've had players like it in the past. They're not the worst footballers in the world, but we've got Costa and Cavallero, the two lightweight when you're playing out wide in the Premier League. Once they get a kick or once they get bossed out of the game, you just don't see them again for the rest of the game. And he's had 20 good minutes in the whole season so far, which isn't good enough. So I wouldn't be missing him too much. But no, I agree with you, Dom. I think there's going to be a lot of questions that are going to have to be answered in the summer.
Lots gone on in the last 2 years at Wolves. Obviously, the change of manager over the summer. Before that, the extended run over the pandemic in the latter stages of the Europa League. We've talked about Moutinho, and we've talked about Jimenez's horrific injury. Is he the same player? We talked about Fabio Silva. Is he going to do the business? I just feel, and it's difficult to pinpoint at one thing, but I'd like your thoughts on this, Gav. And it goes back at least 2 years. Did they ever truly get over losing Jota to Liverpool?
Well,
And the reason I say that is because Liverpool got him on the cheap. They really did.
No.
They really did.
No, I don't disagree
he
with
was always the one
anything.
that stood out for me. And but as I say, we could talk for hours on that. Chelsea on Saturday away from home. I don't know what's going to happen there. I didn't think much of Chelsea today at Everton. So
Well, this is it, isn't it? I wouldn't be surprised if he went there and nicked a 1-0 the way that this season's going. I thought they were very pedestrian and poor today against Everton. I watched the whole game, and I think they just let Everton win it on the occasion more than anything. It wouldn't surprise me if I went there and got something, Ben. But for me now, I think the season's gone. I genuinely think it's gone now. I don't think there's a lot to play for. You see it a lot in the way the players' body language is. And yesterday, to me, I just don't think they're there. I think they're half on the beach, if I'm going to be honest. I really do. No, I think Dan Lonker's been on the beach since 2018, but that's another topic for another day. But I just don't think I don't think it's there. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't. If they really thought there was a chance of getting the top 6, I think you would have seen a different display yesterday.
I'll tell you what caught my eye, Dom, today with Chelsea. What a dirty little so-and-so Mason Mount's become.
You think?
Which I found odd.
Yeah, I think was it Mount who he shoved someone, didn't he? And there was a little brawl. Because I watched the game as well. I'm not sure what he had a bit, didn't he? I think the Chelsea players were so frustrated, weren't they?
Yeah.
I think he's the chief wound-up merchant for the midfield there now, isn't it?
Could well be.
I noticed it the game when they played Arsenal, to be honest. I think he's... I don't know, it must be like a nomination that you get for in the squad.
But I think there's an example of what you just said about probably what you'd like to see from Bruno Lage is that Thomas Tuchel doesn't sit still, and he's up, and Chelsea can score, and they can score the perfect goal, and he'll still, while everybody's celebrating, be shouting down the fourth official's ear hole over something, and he just finds something to sort of get excited about, and it seems to reflect with Chelsea going a bit over the top on the field, but we'll see what happens. It's the West Midlands Football Podcast here on this Sunday evening. We're streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Staying in the Premier League, and it took 6 games, 4 defeats, 1 draw, but we got there in the end. Aston Villa 2, Aston Villa 2, Norwich 0, a result which ultimately relegates Norwich City and Dean Smith. We'll come on to that as part of the discussion in just a minute. And obviously, Don, Villa not mathematically safe, and the results for Burnley and Everton have put the cat amongst the pigeons. I mean, I'd be worried if I was a Leeds fan right now. But so not mathematically safe, but really, it should never have taken until the last day of April to get to 40 points.
No, it shouldn't have. I completely agree. I was just thinking when you said mathematically, yeah, we got 40 points, but as you say, it's May Day. It's May now, and I think the whole performance against Norwich wasn't that good. Like we didn't have more of the ball. Norwich looked dangerous in a couple of moments, which it wasn't our best performance. I did think the team selection, though, was probably our best in a while. Seeing Callum Chambers get a game was brilliant because Ezri Konsa's been really poor, to be honest, for a while now, and he's kept being in the team. But then we keep a clean sheet, and then he gets dropped. Don't really understand that, but there you go. Happy that Chambers is back. I don't know how Dina's dislocated his collarbone or something, and then come back 3 weeks later. He's back. Obviously, the big debut for Timo Rabunam, who acquitted himself really well for a really inexperienced 18-year-old. He looks like a marvellous prospect.
Yeah, he put himself about, didn't he? He got stuck in. I thought, and wasn't afraid to go in with the challenges, and like you said, promising from him Um, Leon Bailey, which we talked about. Um, Ironically, up until he had his injury, and the change was made, and Danny Ings come on, and it changed Villa completely. But ironically, up to that point, Bailey had Villa's best moment with that shot at the edge of the box, which Tim Krul magnificently tipped onto the bar. But I think, and I get your view on this, Dom. I think this is Steven Gerrard's way of saying, I'm not going to play with any width next season. I don't like playing with width. I like to keep the ball, dominate it, and play through the middle. And players like Leon Bailey, no good to me, and they're going to be moved on.
Potentially. I would say on the alternative side that one of Gerrard's biggest successes at Rangers was Ryan Kent, who is, if you watch him, more of a winger, but played in that similar 2-10 system that Gerrard normally likes to play. And I think he's trying to give Bailey minutes because anyone who saw the Everton game, or anyone who's watched him in the Bundesliga, knows that he's a crazy, crazy talent. He's a phenomenal football player on his day. He's just struggled with lots of injuries here, bit of unluckiness, not always being in the team. And I think Gerrard's saying, look, it's the end of the season. I'm going to give you a chance to show me what you can do. And let's be honest, he hasn't. He might ship Bailey, though. I agree. I think there's probably only two. I think I said last time I was on it, there's probably only 2 or 3 players in that squad who are untouchable. Everyone else, if the right offer comes in, I think they'd probably leave because Gerrard wants to make a stamp on that squad in the summer. I think the more interesting debate myself with the squad is what do you do about the Emi Buendia and Philip Coutinho situation. I think it's pretty. I would personally say, in my view, you can only really keep one of them around next year because they're very similar in what they do, very similar in the position they take up on the pitch, and whenever they've played together, it hasn't worked very well. Obviously, Buendia records signing, Coutinho being Gerrard's signing. What do you think?
I feel kind of bad, really, because you can tell, even when he comes off the bench, Buendia, he wants to do well so badly. He really does. He doesn't bury his head in the sand and he doesn't sulk. And, he really does put a shift in to try and, particularly if Villa are behind, actually, if we're like 1-0 down or something. I'm coming on, I'm going to try and turn this around. I'm going to try and sort of do something about it. And it's like the talent level is the same similar between Coutinho and Buendia. Buendia is like a Tasmanian devil trying to get the things right, and Coutinho like, I've been here, I've done it all before, I'm super cool. So it's like the two sides of that. I think you'll keep Buendia around. I do, just in case, because you kind of never know. I'm wondering if they'll sign another striker, or I think he'll go 2 up top a lot of the time next season. The best results have been Ings and Watkins up front together. And however they've tried to do that, it hasn't always been possible to get them both on the pitch. When they have both been on the pitch, the team have looked better going forward, and they were both on the score sheet yesterday. Do they buy another striker? Does Cameron Archer come back from having a really good season on loan at Preston? Could he light up the Premier League next year? That's a good thing to possibly sort of look out for. But it's the midfield for me, Dom. It's the midfield. That midfield needs a complete overhaul, and we need to be bullying teams. We need teams, and every fan says this about their team, right? We need the opposition to be beaten when they walk out at 2:05 at Villa Park on a Saturday afternoon to warm up. That's what we need, and that's what I want to see. And that starts in the midfield. And you earn the right to be able to do that. That first half against Tottenham, where some would say Villa were a bit aggressive and went a bit over the top, but that's what I want to see every week. That is, we just didn't get the goal that level of play deserved, and then Tottenham's quality took over in the second half. That's what I want to see. That's what I want to see week in, week out. Quite frankly. So there are too many in there that, like with Wolves, have probably been there too long. It needs refreshing. I just think general, obviously you mentioned 2 or 3 asserts. Obviously, Jacob Ramsey is one of them because he signed that big contract recently. I think the jury's out on the rest, though. We still don't know. We still don't know the final details of what Chukwuemeka is going to do with his contract negotiations. You could move Douglas Luiz on. You could move John McGinn on quite comfortably. I wouldn't have any issue with either of those leaving the club right now. So that's where it's got to happen. It's got to happen in the midfield. The goalkeeper, as good as anything outside the top 4, he's tied down with a contract. I like Callum Chambers. I like Luca Digne. I like Matty Cash. Tyrone Mings I can tolerate if he's got his head right. So that's fine. That keep going with that. It's that midfield.
Yeah.
It needs to be stronger. It needs to be more aggressive, and it needs to dominate. And that's what he's got to look at.
I mean, we spoke about this a few weeks ago, Ben. I've had a few weeks to stew on it. Is there anybody that you think that the Villa could realistically get that would do that job for you? Because there was somebody that was playing against us yesterday that I think could do that job for you in midfield, if I'm going to be honest. I think if you had someone like, if you had somebody like an Yves Bissouma in the middle of the park, I think that would give you a lot more balance in the team. I really do.
I don't want to obviously go in too much on this. Does Bissouma have off-field issues?
I think the stuff that's been going on with, or we can talk about, but there's stuff been going on with gambling issues. Apparently that's resolved now.
Is he not in court over something?
Yeah,
and other stuff as well. I think. Yeah. But
so there's that to sort of factor in. Calvin Phillips is often linked. I think probably will miss out on a team that's genuinely going to go for the top 4. And I don't think that will be, even though Villa will look to improve next year, that's not ultimately where Villa are going to end up. So I think they'll miss out on Calvin Phillips. But players of that type, just an absolute, just a beast. Somebody who frightens the opposition. I'm not talking about, and I'm not talking about anybody who you still got to be able to play football. You've still got to be able to do that.
Well, I think with someone like Calvin Phillips, so that for me, unless somebody like Man City or Liverpool come knocking the door, I don't think he'll ever leave Leeds as long as they're in the Premiership. If I'm going to be honest, I just think he's Leeds through and through. But we all want that in that league, don't we? I think we want that boss midfielder that can chip in with a couple of goals, but can absolutely run a game as well, can't they? And it's they're hard to find. But if you get one, you keep hold of them. You don't let them go. But I think Gerrard playing there most of his career, it was not stupid, is he? I think he knows that's probably the top of the shopping list in the summer. I really do.
Maybe, but he wasn't that player. He was the player that benefited from having that alongside him.
He was the Ramsey with Alonso behind.
Yeah. So
I think but I think when you play in that, it's just, we say that about defenders, but like you see teams like Steve Bruce's that have been poor at defending before. But if you play in that area of the pitch, I think they've switched on to know what they need at the same time. I think you're in good hands with him. I really do. Look, I think the width thing may be neither here or there that you were speaking about, that he doesn't fancy playing with that next season, in your opinion. But I think it could be an exciting 2 or 3 years at Villa. I really do, with the manager you got there. I think he's got a plan from what you've read, and who knows? Could be could be some interesting ones coming in at the same time.
I hate to be a sort of like killjoy with this kind of thing. Oh yeah, we've got some proper money behind us and we've got a lot of ambition, and it's time to get excited. And you think that Everton spent £800 million. They had Carlo Ancelotti and what have you. So I don't either. Actually, I don't think we do. I think it's a couple of key areas. It's the mentality for me, Dom, with a few of them. It's the soft underbelly. We've got to get rid of that.
Exactly.
I don't think you're too far off. I think you're very sorry, Dom. I think you're very, in a way, I think you're very similar to Wolves. I think you're not too far off. You just need that you need the doll tweaked in a couple of it, like you said, with a couple of key areas where you need maybe 2 or 3 that have been there too long, that are too comfortable now, and you need 2 or 3 to come in to just add a bit of spice and just something different. To be honest, like that's always the key with the football team for me. I think when you're doing relatively well, that's the time to try different things rather than when you're struggling. So I think you're not too far off. I genuinely don't. I think, like you say, like just in this league, there's no room for comfortability for me. I think once that starts to kick in, you have to try something different. But yeah, sorry, carry on, Dom, because I've cut you off then. Sorry.
No, it's all right. I was just going to say, you were talking about defensive midfielders. I was listening there quite interestingly. I think one of the worst things that Villa could do this summer is spend 40, 50 million on a number 6. I agree that position is of the utmost importance. But let's point out, we're talking about a player, right, who is what we need. We need someone who's extremely physical, but also technical, an intelligent defender, able at progressing the ball, and possibly could chip in with a couple of goals. Tim Burnham in 2 years, 3 years' time is that player, and you can't gamble on that too soon because I know we have immediate short-term aspirations, but I've watched him extensively at youth level, and it's a different thing. It's a completely different level, and the Premier League is a lot more physical, it's a lot more intense, and it's a lot quicker, and I think it takes time for young players to adapt to that. But we've seen how Jacob Ramsey's dealt with that adaptation, and we're looking at Eric Burnham, and he is exactly that kind of player for us. In terms of defensive midfielder we should sign in the long term, the obvious one, the one who Gerrard, Langer and Perslow all went to scout in Marseille, the one who's going to cost a grand total of £0 in transfer fees, is Boubacar Kamara of Marseille, who we've already got a contract on the table for. He's 22 years old. He's a phenomenal number 6. He's played there for Marseille for a couple of years now. He's played at centre-back as well. So if you wanted to play with Burnham, you could put him back as centre-back or put them next to each other. He is that big kind of enforcer. He could also sit higher up, where McGinn plays now, because he's an adept passer of the ball. He could tick the game over. So I think if Villa were to spend 60 million on a defensive midfielder, and then in a couple of years' time that defensive midfielder's worth 30 million and he's blocking Eric Burnham's path into the team or someone similar, because we've got a few midfielders in the academy, I think we're getting into a crucial stage of the Villa building the squad and integrating the youth players in, of squad planning as to who's going to be here in 3 years' time, who's going to hopefully be starting in 3 years' time, and how do we plan around that. Because, for example, we should not be playing Douglas Luiz for the rest of the season. It is quite obvious that he's leaving. He's been out in multiple media outlets. He's got a year left on his deal. Really cashing on him in January, and I'll be shocked if we didn't cash in on him now. Morgan Sanson the same. And those minutes should be going to people who are going to be with us longer term, such as Tim Burnham, who I think should keep his place on Saturday.
It's the kind of footballer I hate watching, Douglas Luiz. It just doesn't do it. Do you remember when they said the plan was Man City sold him to us for 15 million, and if all goes well, they'll buy him back for 100? And that was the deal. That was the, we're gonna have this great midfield player, and then City will take him off our hands, and we'll be sort of quids in. But it's not even talked about now, is it? And that's just the way that's gone. Huge game at Burnley on Saturday now, Don. Obviously with the form that they're in. I did see somebody tweet, they didn't realise they were being ironic. When they said, I'd literally never heard of Michael Jackson. I go, well, really? Okay. He had a couple of hits, but what a job. We all said when they got rid of Sean Dyche, well, that's that. They've screwed that up now. Looks like it's a masterstroke.
I think they gambled on getting a new manager bounce towards the end of the season before doing something more permanent in the summer managerially. And I think so far that's looking to work wonders. I also think the form after Dyche has left shows the possibility that there was some things going on behind the scenes, because the players look happier, they look more up for it, they look more confident, they look more motivated. It looks like someone's come in and breathed a whole fresh air into the club, when in realism it's the club captain and the under-23s manager who's doing that. As for the game against Burnley on Saturday, I think it's going to be really difficult. You've got a team who are fighting for their lives, who are in brilliant form, and know they're playing us twice before the end of the season, so we'll want to put a stamp on authority to try and get 6 points out of us. I think it is a chance for Villa to play a creative lineup. I want to see Burnham playing, as I just said. I'd love to see Chambers keeping his place. Maybe it'll go back to the 2 strikers. I think that's probably going to be the case because that's what worked really well against Norwich. And I think if Villa do play like that, I think there'll be that 4-1-2-1-2 sort of diamond in midfield behind those 2 strikers. I think we could cause Burnley a lot of damage because, as much as we talk about needing a new striker in the summer, on that day, Ollie Watkins and Danny Ings can score goals for you in the Premier League. So it's going to be a difficult physical battle against a team with so much momentum and so much to fight for. But I'm hoping to see sort of new signs of progression and quality and dominance and tactical style the way Gerrard wants to play, and a Gerrard Villa team any game now.
If Burnley were to take 6 points from Villa in the next couple of weeks, does that put us back in it, or are Leeds fixtures, next 3 fixtures, just so horrendous that they'll never catch Villa up?
I think we're okay. I think we're a much, much better team than Leeds, and I think our performance against Leeds showed that. But then again, we lost to Watford really recently, or drew to them. I can't remember, but I think, yeah, it's not. I think we're okay, but it's never. We know, especially with this relegation race, where Burnley were favourites to go down. Before that, Leeds were favourite to go down. Then Everton favourites to go down. They've just beat Chelsea and Man United. So I think any team could go down sort of in that bottom 6, to be honest. And Villa need to get some wins just to be mathematically safe.
Yeah, I'd worry if I was a Leeds fan tonight. I must admit the way this weekend.
Well, I didn't realise how close they were to the drop. And to be honest, until yesterday when I saw the table, it shocked me a bit. I think there's too much. There's way too much to have to happen for you to be dragged back into it. That's just what I personally think. I think there's too many permutations. Too much. I did say last week I thought it was going to be a tug of war between Everton and Burnley, but obviously I've been proved wrong again yesterday. But going into that game against Burnley on next weekend, what I feel I've got to lose. They've not mathematically, but I think you are safe. Why not try something different and see what happens? The worst case scenario, you go there and lose against a team that are fighting for the lives anyway. So, yeah.
Leeds' goal difference could be huge in the final reckoning, and that ultimately could be the legacy of Bielsa in his style of football, and that's ultimately what it led to. It's the West Midlands Football Podcast here on this Sunday evening. Myself, Ben Ellis, Dom Phillips, and Gavin Longthorne looking back on all of the weekend's action. The penultimate round of fixtures in the Championship wasn't a bad weekend for either of our 2 sides. West Brom going to Reading and coming away with a 1-0 victory. By all accounts, it was a dreadful game and a dreadful performance, but Albion got the win. We're just going over old ground here, really, now that we've reached the end of the Championship season. But the big news, Dom, is that the decision's been made that for next season, no thank you, Andy Carroll. And West Brom are going to move in another direction.
I'd like to think that Bruce has had some level of input in it, but I do think knowing Steve Bruce, Andy Carroll might be a player we'd like to keep around. I know that he's growing older and that, but I think he scored some really important goals for the Baggies, and I think his experience and his top level experience in particular, and some of his qualities have really helped them out in crucial times. I don't know if it's because of I don't know if he's on a particularly high wages and it's a financial decision. It is one that confuses me though, and leads me to believe that they've got the answer in some sort of other striker, whether it ends up being the Daryl DK when he's eventually fit. I don't know, but it's an interesting one, and I'm interested to hear what you lads think about
it. Gav, I'll give my thoughts in a sec if you want to go ahead.
I think for me, he's not the worst striker you can have in the world in that league, but at the same time, I think he's got that knack of being injury prone. I don't think Bruce is the type of guy that will bank on. Look, Andy Carroll's not going to play 46 games in a season. I don't think he'll even play half of that, if I'm going to be completely honest. He's had a good run with the Baggies. He scored a few vital goals for them. But I think with Bruce there, I think he's going to go in a different, like you said, Dom, I think he's going to go in a different direction. I think he's got to rip out some of that team, and he's got to start from scratch next season, because I think that's the best chance that they've got of getting promoted. I mean, Andy Carroll's a casualty that's been made, but I think he's not going to be the only one. I think you're going to probably get about 6 or 7 at least going into the close season. And I think you're probably going to see a very different West Brom team at the start of next season, especially in the first game. Like Ben said, I think it's a cut and paste of a lot of games this season. I think we'll probably say the same thing about the Blues as well when we talk about them, if I'm going to be honest. I think we know where West Brom are going to be. I think we knew where they were going to be about 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks ago. And I think this isn't a surprise performance to be thrown in. I think the half on the beach, I think the manager half knows that the season's, well, the manager does know the season's done. And I think it's not going to be an exciting game of football for the rest of the season, whatever game they play.
The thing about Daryl DK is that it's unfortunate in that he was Valerian Ismail's trump card, wasn't he? He was like his player that he had at Barnsley last season, and I'm going to bring him in. He's going to score a lot of goals in the Championship, and he gets injured in his debut. And, that with Ismail already under pressure, that was the opportunity, wasn't it? That was the opportunity for him to say, yeah, I can still turn this round. Bear in mind, they were fifth when Ismail was sacked, and I don't think anybody's complaining that Ismail had to go. It had sort of reached that point, but there's been no sustained improvements. Bruce knows what it takes to get out of the Championship, and he knows that squad needs a huge overhaul. And it's just a question of, is he going to be allowed to do that under the structure at West Bromwich Albion? Because like Birmingham City, it's clouded in a lot of mystery when it's coming from the Far East. Is Steve Bruce now over the hill in terms of being a manager? And the reason I ask that question is that we've seen for 2 consecutive years now in the Premier League that and this is not a nice term, but I can't think of a better one, the dinosaur firefighter, please keep us up at all costs manager hasn't worked. It didn't work with Sam Allardyce coming in at West Brom last season, and it's not going to work out for Roy Hodgson at Watford. Is Steve Bruce now going to be like a similar age to those managers and have been around a long time? Has football moved on beyond Steve Bruce? That's a question that he's going to have to sort of answer next season. And the third question is, are the fans going to put up with it? Are they going to put up with the Steve Bruce style from game one next season? Do we get to the first international break, second international break? What position will they be in by the time everything stops for the World Cup? And I think that's what I'd be thinking now if I was an Albion fan. If I was our mate Jonathan, we're sitting here, that's what I'd be thinking. Where will we be by the time the World Cup starts? Because that's going to be an opportunity for every club to take stock, to say, right, it's a mid-season break. We're effectively playing 2 seasons because how long it's going to be off for. Where can we go? Where can we reassess? I wonder if there'll be a lot of managerial changes while the World Cup goes on. That will be interesting. It's Barnsley on the last day of the season at West Brom. Absolutely nothing to play for there, of course. Barnsley already relegated to League One. There's been some talk that Albion fans want the club to kind of jazz it up for the final day of the season and change the music that the DJ plays and just try something new, is what they're saying. Just let's please try something new. But we'll have to wait and see. As I say, similar story up the road at St Andrews, 1-1 draw at Cardiff, having been in front. So similar story to the previous game against Millwall. But Dom, at least they've shown in the last 2 games. They reached rock bottom at Blackpool, didn't they? Quite frankly, and at least over the last 2 games, they put a shift in for Lee Bowyer, if nothing else.
Yeah, I think Lee Bowyer is a great example there. What I really respect about him is I think after that Blackpool defeat, I don't think anyone would have blamed him if he would have walked, to be honest. But what he did is he stuck by his players, ones that you could quite easily argue would let him down. He lit a rocket up them, and while the result, he hasn't come out and got 2 massive 5-0 wins or something, he's come out and he's got a response in terms of effort and in terms of determination, in terms of understanding of what it takes to play for a club with a proud history and a proud tradition like Birmingham City. You know, any of the Midlands clubs fans will tell you the same thing, that's what they want. And, you know, I've got to give massive respect to Lebo. I think he handled it very well. I think it's solid. The end of the season could have been just a calamitous slide, and then, like a month before the end of the season, you wouldn't be thinking much was wrong, but then it's suddenly all gone wrong. But no, I think he's handled that really well. I think it's two decent results, and I'm not sure they've got on the final day, but if they were to end on a win, that would probably put a smile on Blues fans' faces to look forward for next season.
Yeah, absolutely. The final day of the season in the Championship will be next Sunday, I think, and all the games. Is it Saturday? I don't know, but all the games will kick off at the same time on Saturday 12:30, and they're at home to Blackburn as well, which might as well be the final game of the season for Tony Mowbray in charge of Blackburn. I think they'll make a change as well. He's had a good 5-year run at that, and they just don't know, do they? They're going to go to the final home game of the season. They would be, had Reading and Derby not had their points deductions, Gav, they would have been going into this game needing a result to stay up. At the very least, they could already have been down.
I think it's a case, Ben, of luck. That's a blessing in disguise for them, obviously. I think you could sum up the last half of the season for Blues in 4 words. It is what it is. I think what we've seen for a lot of this season is what has been the whole season for Blues. There's never been any danger of going down because of those points deductions from other teams, but they haven't been knocking the door to be in the playoff race or the top half of the Championship, be that either. I've heard a couple of rumours online. I read a couple of rumours online today that the Lee Bowyer's not entirely safe there, which I find absolutely astronomically ridiculous because who else would do as good of a job with what is being offered to me? I think he's played in that league. He's not a stupid coach, and I think he knows what you have to do to get results in that league. They may be restricted by the fact that they can't have that much freedom in the transfer window. I think they could do, we spoke about it with Villa and Wolves, but I think they could do with getting rid of 2 or 3 and bringing 2 or 3 in to jazz it up a bit. I'd definitely make Lowell Taylor permanent the day after the season finishes, because I think he is a real good get, even on loan in that league. I think he will score your goals. He's a good get to have in that league. But like I said earlier, I think it's somewhat up in 4 words to the Blues. I think it is what it is for them. They were never in any danger of going down, but they were never in any push to go up at the same time, for me.
Yeah, I think if you talk about if the rumour is going around that Lee Bowyer might not be safe, Dom. Well, this is a board who have previously sacked Gary Rowett and Gary Monk out of nowhere. So take that with a pinch of salt. So I don't know. I don't know. I just think, the worst part is. That's not the worst. That's a ridiculous statement. Actually, not the worst part, because I can't contextualize that. But what I'm trying to say is, as a Villa fan, I should laugh my whatsits off at this week in, week out. I should find this hilarious, and I don't.
It's depressing, isn't it?
I don't find it hilarious at all. I find it sad. I find it sad. These are people you work with. These are people you spend a lot of time with. Might wear a different coloured shirt, and sections of us, when we happen to play each other, might behave like idiots. But generally, we're all the same, and it's just sad. I just find it very sad.
It's just an embarrassingly bad run club, isn't it?
Yeah, no doubt about it. So not long left to go here. There's one more game to go in League Two for Walsall. That will be against Swindon. They drew 2-2 with Colchester on Saturday. Swindon will be looking to secure themselves a place in the playoffs when they come to the Banksy Stadium on Saturday at 3. All games kick off at 3 o'clock on the final day of the League Two season. They're obviously okay. I'm going to make this a wider discussion about League Two. Dom, obviously Walsall are okay, and Michael Flynn's coming in. He's done really well, and I think Walsall will be one to watch under him next season for sure. But I think League Two now, and I just think of Oldham Athletic, and I just think how incredibly sad that story is. For the first ever team to play in the Premier League to be relegated from the Football League. It only took 30 years.
Yeah, it's a real shame. I can't remember if I was talking to you guys when we had this discussion before, but from a financial perspective now, given the owners that we've got in the Football League and the post-COVID financial situation, sort of, you're going to see a club like this pretty much every season or two now that just is really badly run. Finances all go wrong. Fans are let down. Players are let down. Coaching staff's let down. And it's really depressing because you're seeing, as you say, old great footballing institutions falling down into non-league. I mean, just take a look at some of the teams who were playing in the National League. You know, I think I talked about that last week. Teams like Stockport and Wrexham and Chesterfield, Notts County. Notts County, the oldest football club in the country, who are the reason Juventus wear black and white. It's absolutely and utterly criminal that this is the state of the footballing pyramid. And, you know, these are massive, massive clubs. And
They are.
I think for me, it just you two might disagree with me, but I think it runs home how close we all are to it. From how I think you rely a lot on your clubs being run well. You know, talk about how well Wolves are doing at the moment, but you know, it was only 6.5 years ago we were 2 levels in front of where Oldham are now. And I think you know, you see it with Sunderland, Ipswich. You see proper established Football League teams that just stay in the Football League, and you know, it doesn't take too much for it to go wrong. I'm telling you, look, you know, we brag about how well we're doing at the moment, and we've played European football, and some of the days that I've gone down to Wolves playing European football, I won't forget until the day I die. But it's not too far off for anyone, and you know, for me, when I look at stuff like Oldham and I look at how other clubs have been run, when I go on a rant and I get annoyed about how we've, you know, lost a game like we did yesterday against an established Premier League team, you know, you've got to realise you play sometimes. You've got to think, oh, God, we were so close to that ourselves. You know, there are clubs that, you know, look, where do Oldham go from here? Oh, I don't know anyway. But you're talking about Walsall, Ben. I think they're going to have quite a half exciting summer, to be honest. I think they've got a good coach there. Yeah, I think that he's got some decent connections from when he was at Newport and other places as well. So you may see some exciting players for that level coming in. Who knows? They could be back in League One again next season. Well, the season after next, I should say, sorry.
You asked the question, Gav, where do Oldham go from here? Well, let's hope they don't go to Solihull Moors. Let's hope that isn't possible, because fantastic again yesterday, 4-2 win away at Weymouth. You know, and if you know, Solihull Moors fans might have travelled down to the sunny south coast. It was a nice day weather-wise yesterday. That'd have been a lot of pleasure involved in getting that result. So. We said a couple of weeks ago, Gav, when myself and Don were talking, that this is probably the most overlooked story in football nationally, is how Solihull Moors are doing, and it's a disgrace because they're absolutely brilliant. Are the Moors right now, and they go to Boreham Wood next Saturday, 4th in the table, 2 points behind. Halifax, 4 points behind Wrexham as well. So it's still possible that Solihull Moors Dom could get one of the more favourable playoff spots.
I think that's got to be their main target. They've got to try and leapfrog Halifax. Every time I check the Moors score every week, the first thing I look for after the Moors score is how did Halifax get on, and I'm like, oh, the Moors won, brilliant. Did Halifax finally drop points? No, they didn't. And obviously they're going right into the end of the season now, and if they get that second or third spot and they go straight to the playoff semi-finals, that's 180 minutes less football they have to play, 180 minutes less risk they have to take of, losing the entire playoff thing. So there's some really good teams up there in the playoff equation, but Moors have been in fantastic form for a long time, and I hope that with how versatile in terms of the play style that we've been in, some of the goal scorers like Andrew Dallas, I think he's in over 20 in all competitions now this season. I think they've got a good squad, a really good manager, some good momentum going into the playoff spots. They just need to end the season on a high and really carry that momentum, because that is something they didn't do last time they were in the playoffs. It was quite sluggish towards the end of the season, and then they got dumped out by FC Fylde. What they need to do now is go in and show, and as you were talking about with Villa, it's about intimidation now. We've got to intimidate those other playoff teams, and then who knows, you could have Solihull, Moors and Walsall playing in the same division of football, which is unthinkable, to be honest.
Absolutely. Just got to make a quick correction. There's a full programme in the National League tomorrow, Bank Holiday Monday. They're at home to Bromley. And then Saturday at home to Dagenham Redbridge, and Bournemouth away on the final day of the season. So 3 games still to go in the league. Just checking on what Halifax are doing. So they're at Eastleigh, and then they're at home to Aldershot, and they finish the season against Stockport, which
that could be a tasty one on the final day.
It could be, couldn't it? It could be, but it'd be great. It'd be great if they could get up for sure. So I'm sure we will look at this all again next week. Maybe the Premier League relegation battle will be a little clearer. As I say, touch wood, we won't be even closer to it. As I say, I think you're right, Dom. I think we'll be all right as far as that is concerned. The Championship season will have concluded as well, so we can reflect on 46 very difficult games for both Birmingham City and West Bromwich Albion, as opposed to just the one we saw or heard the day before. And that indeed will be that. The Box to Box podcast nationally is happening Tuesday night at 8 o'clock as well. Do join us on Facebook for that. But for now, for Dom Phillips, for Gav Longthorne, good luck on Friday, Gav. I'll just leave that out there, leave it for the listeners to think what's he talking about. Myself, Ben Ellis, we will indeed talk to you next Sunday. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.